VEI0.
Effusive eruptions. At VI0, eruptions are calm and almost peaceful to watch. Instead of explosions, the Earth simply leaks molten rock. These are called effusive eruptions, and they're most famously seen in Hawaii with Kilauea and Mauna Loa. Lava flows like glowing rivers, slowly covering forests, roads, and even homes. On the surface, they don't seem life-threatening because people can usually outrun the lava. But the destruction is total and permanent. What's amazing is that these eruptions are builders, not destroyers. They create brand new land, forming volcanic islands over millions of years. Without eruptions like these, entire places like Hawaii and Iceland wouldn't exist. VEI1V Gentle eruptions. VI1 is a step up. These are still relatively small, but they produce dramatic firework-like bursts of magma, ash, and volcanic gases. Stromboli in Italy is the best example, erupting continuously for centuries with explosions every 10 to 20 minutes. Locals call it the lighthouse of the Mediterranean because sailors used it for navigation. While they rarely cause large-scale destruction, these eruptions are more dangerous than they look. Lava bombs, chunks of molten rock the size of cars, can be hurled hundreds of meters, and toxic gases can suffocate anyone too close. What makes them fascinating is their predictability. You can actually visit Stromboli and watch the eruptions happen in a safe zone, like nature's own fireworks display. VEI2 Moderate eruptions. At VEI2, eruptions become a regional hazard. Explosions are strong enough to send ash columns 2 to 5 kilometers high, which can blanket nearby towns, damage crops, and force airports to shut down. A classic example is Mount Etna in Sicily, which erupts frequently at this level. Farmers living nearby often face hardships because volcanic ash destroys harvests and contaminates water supplies. On the other hand, that same ash makes the soil incredibly fertile in the long term. So, people take the risk of living near these volcanoes because the land is so productive. It's a trade-off: safety versus prosperity. VEI3 Severe eruptions. V3 eruptions can kill. These events launch ash plumes over 10 kilometers high and often produce pyroclastic flows, fast-moving clouds of hot gas and volcanic rock that can incinerate everything in their path at speeds over 100 miles per hour. A tragic example is Nevado del Ruiz in Colombia in 1985. The eruption itself wasn't huge, but it melted the volcano's glaciers, sending massive lahars, mud flows made of ash and water, down into the valleys. Within hours, the town of Armero was buried, killing more than 23,000 people. This shows that you don't need a colossal eruption to have catastrophic consequences. Even a moderate VEI3 event can become a national disaster depending on geography and preparation. VEI4 Cataclysmic eruptions. Now we move into cataclysmic territory. VEI4 eruptions can blast tens of millions of tons of ash and rock into the air, reaching 20 kilometers high. The 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption in Washington is the textbook example. It wasn't just an explosion. The entire side of the mountain collapsed in the largest landslide ever recorded. The blast flattened 230 square miles of forest, destroyed highways, and killed 57 people. Witnesses described the sky turning black as day turned into night. Even areas hundreds of miles away were coated in ash. VEI4 eruptions show just how suddenly a beautiful mountain can turn into a destructive monster. VEI5 Paroxysmal eruptions. VEI5 eruptions are unforgettable. These events eject over 1 cubic kilometer of volcanic material and send ash plumes into the stratosphere, up to 25 kilometers high. One of the most infamous is Mount Vesuvius in AD 79, which buried Pompeii and Herculaneum in hot ash and pumice. People were killed instantly, their bodies preserved in haunting detail for archaeologists to study centuries later. Another VEI5 example is Mount St. Helens, which some measurements put between VEI4 and 5. The devastation of these eruptions is felt for decades. Entire cities vanish, and the stories of survival and loss echo through history. VEI6 Colossal eruptions. When we reach VEI6, eruptions become global events. They eject more than 10 cubic kilometers of material, and can disrupt the climate for years. The most famous example is the 1883 eruption of Krakatoa. It was so loud that it was heard 3,000 miles away. Reports say people thought it was cannon fire or even the end of the world. The eruption unleashed tsunamis that killed over 36,000 people, and ash clouds darkened skies around the globe. Temperatures dropped, sunsets turned blood red, and the aftereffects lasted for years. This shows how a single eruption can literally change the weather. V7. Supercolossal eruptions. V7 eruptions are once-in-millennia events that leave permanent scars on human history. The 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia is the most famous. It ejected over 150 cubic kilometers of material and caused the year without a summer. Crops failed across Europe, Asia, and North America. Famines killed tens of thousands, and even culture was shaped by it. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was written during the gloomy summer of 1816 when the skies never cleared. These eruptions don't just destroy locally, they affect the entire human race. VEI8. Mega-colossal eruptions, supervolcanoes. Finally, we reach VEI8, the largest eruptions possible. These are supervolcanoes, capable of ejecting over 1,000 cubic kilometers of material. The most famous candidates are Yellowstone in the United States and Lake Toba in Indonesia. Yellowstone's last major eruption, around 640,000 years ago, blanketed half of North America in ash. Lake Toba's eruption 74,000 years ago was so catastrophic that scientists believe it caused a volcanic winter lasting nearly a decade. Some even argue it reduced the global human population to just a few thousand survivors. If a VEI8 eruption happened today, modern civilization would struggle to survive. Crops would fail, supply chains would collapse, and billions of lives would be at risk. These are the true planet changers. VEI9. Planet-changing eruptions, the hypothetical titans. While no VEI9 eruption has ever been confirmed in Earth's history, scientists speculate about what it might look like. A VEI9 would involve the release of over 10,000 cubic kilometers of volcanic material, dwarfing even Yellowstone or Toba. The scale of devastation would be so vast that entire continents could be blanketed in ash several feet deep. Crops would fail across the globe, triggering mass famine. Temperatures could plunge for decades, creating a volcanic winter far worse than the Ice Age's humanity has survived. Some researchers argue that ancient flood basalt events, like the Siberian Traps eruption 250 million years ago, which contributed to the largest mass extinction in history, may have approached this scale. If such an event happened today, it wouldn't just disrupt civilization, it could end it as we know it.